I want you to imagine just for a second the mundane annoyance of a long airport layover today.
Oh, yeah. We all know that feeling.
Right. You know the drill. You're taking off your shoes. You're separating your liquids into those tiny.
As little approved plastic bags.
Exactly. And you're stepping into a scanner with your hands above your head. It's tedious, but I mean, we generally accept it as the baseline cost of global safety.
Hmm.
Now, compare that highly sanitized experience to the reality of Athens, Greece in 1976. You could quite literally walk onto a commercial airliner with hand grenades in your carry-on luggage,
Hand grenades.
simply because the metal detector was broken and the X-ray screens were completely unmanned.
It just sounds like a completely different world.
Yeah.
And that stark contrast in security infrastructure is, well, it's where our story actually begins today.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a seriously fascinating stack of historical sources in front of us detailing the 1976 Entebbe raid. Our mission today is to unpack these documents and really understand how a perfectly routine passenger flight transformed into a 4,000-kilometer military gamble.
A gamble that completely redefined geopolitical audacity.
Yeah. We're going to explore the mechanics of crisis decision-making and how tiny, seemingly insignificant details,
Like a broken X-ray machine.
right, how those ended up shaping global events.
So to set the scene properly, let's establish the timeline. It's the 27th of June, 1976. The morning air at Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv is filled with the usual hum of aviation routine. Air France flight AF-139, which is an Airbus A300, leaves the tarmac around 9 in the morning.
And this wasn't a direct flight to Paris, right?
No, makes a scheduled stop in Athens. On board are 246 passengers. And because the flight originated in Israel, the passenger manifest is heavily weighted toward Jewish and Israeli citizens. When they leave Tel Aviv, nobody has any inkling of the geopolitical firestorm they're about to enter.
So the flight lands in Athens at 11:30 a.m., right on schedule. The transit passengers are stretching their legs in the terminal, but moving through that exact same building are four individuals whose carry-on bags are hiding pistols and hand grenades.
Thanks to that sieve of an airport security setup we just mentioned.
Exactly. They breeze right through the terminal. Two of them take seats in first class, two settle into economy. They look and act like everyone else until they don't.
The pivot from a routine commercial flight to a hostage crisis happens incredibly fast.
Just 8 minutes after takeoff, as the plane is reaching the Gulf of Corinth, the silence just shatters. The two hijackers in first class spring to their feet, weapons are drawn. One has a pistol, the other is gripping a grenade with the pin literally ready to pull. They charge the cockpit. The captain, Michel Bekos, hears the commotion and tells his flight engineer to check the door. The moment it opens, a hijacker named Wilfried Bose jams a gun straight against the engineer's head, forces his way in, and shoves the co-pilot out of his seat.
And his ultimatum is brutal.
Yeah, he says, turn this plane south. Do exactly as I say, or I will put a bullet in your brain.
And while that takeover is happening of the cockpit, the two hijackers in economy have also revealed themselves, securing the aisles. Within 3 minutes, a massive commercial airliner is under their complete, uncontested control.
Then comes the announcement. Bose grabs the microphone, tells the passengers that he is their new captain, and announces that the plane has been renamed Haifa.
He actually renamed it over the intercom.
Yeah, and he issues this chilling bilingual cabin announcement in French and English. Obey, and you might live. Disobey, and we blow the plane out of the sky.
Terrifying.
Okay, let's unpack this. Who exactly are these people holding 246 passengers hostage?
Well, based on the historical record, this was a highly specific ideological alliance between two distinct groups. And just to be clear, we are simply reporting what's in the source material here. We're not taking any sides.
Right, just looking at the facts provided.
Exactly. So two of the hijackers were members of the PFLPEO, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine External Operations, which was a militant group fighting against Israel.
Mm.
The other two, including Wilfried Bose and a woman named Brigitte Kuhlmann, belonged to the German revolutionary cells.
And their ideology was fiercely anti-Western and anti-American.
Yes.
Wait, if these are two entirely different militant groups from different parts of the world, how did they align on a single operation of this scale?
Their shared goal was the unifying factor. They wanted to force the release of 53 of their comrades who were currently jailed across several different countries, specifically Israel, France, Germany, Kenya, and Switzerland.
So they viewed this high-profile hijacking as the ultimate leverage to force a multinational capitulation.
That was the plan.
But if those 53 prisoners are scattered across 5 different sovereign nations, how did the hijackers realistically expect Israel to coordinate a multinational release in just a few days?
They were banking on the sheer unprecedented terror of the situation.
Hmm.
By holding over 200 civilians, many of them Israeli, they assumed the political pressure on the Israeli government would be so immense that Israel would be forced to twist the arms of those other nations to comply.
It was a massive pressure tactic.
Completely.
And the surreal nature of this tactic really ramps up when we look at their first stop. By 3:40 p.m., the plane is running low on fuel and enters Libyan airspace. They land in Benghazi.
Right.
And the scene on the ground reads less like a hijacking and more like bizarre administrative theater. The hijackers actually step off the plane to chat calmly with Libyan officials.
The Libyans bring food on board for the passengers.
Yes. And one of the hijackers literally walks up and down the aisles, collecting passports and stamping visas as if this is just a normal scheduled layover.
It's so surreal.
After 7 hours of this strange juxtaposition, they take off again, heading deep into the heart of Africa.
Which brings us to their final destination, in Entebbe, Uganda. When the passengers hear that name announced, a new wave of terror sets in.
Because they landed in Idi Amin's Uganda.
Exactly, a state already deeply hostile to Israel and entirely unpredictable. The dynamic immediately shifted from a hijacking to a state-sponsored hostage crisis. Amin had previously severed all diplomatic ties with Israel, and his military was fully integrated into the hijackers' operational plan.
So when Flight AF-139 touches down at Entebbe Airport at 3:15 a.m. on June 29th, the passengers look out their windows and see the Ugandan army completely surrounding the plane.
And to rescue them.
No, to guard them. The hijackers moved the 106 hostages into the old terminal building. It's a facility that had been mostly bypassed for a newer terminal, making it the perfect isolated fortress.
And suddenly, 3 more PFLP members join the original 4 hijackers inside.
And Idi Amin himself shows up, giving long-winded speeches where he casts himself as a neutral mediator, though in reality he's acting as the hijackers' official spokesman.
Through Amin, the demands are finally formalized. The hijackers want their 53 prisoners released plus a $5 million ransom. The deadline is set for July 1st at 2:00 p.m. If the demands are not met, the executions will begin.
To tighten the psychological screws, the hijackers initiate what is arguably the darkest moment of this ordeal. They call it a selection.
Yeah.
They actively separate the Jewish and Israeli passengers from the rest of the group, moving them into a completely different hall.
You have to consider the haunting historical weight that specific word selection held for the Jewish passengers in that room. To be separated based on identity, under the threat of death by heavily armed German radicals, directly echoed the darkest chapters of the Holocaust. The psychological terror was profound.
It is a chilling reality. But then, on June 30th, the hijackers make a decision that entirely alters the trajectory of the crisis. They release the non-Israeli hostages, the mothers, the children, the elderly, and put them on a flight to Paris.
Right. And they likely thought they were being operationally efficient. By cutting down the number of hostages, they simplify their logistics, require less food and water, and make the remaining group easier to guard.
Makes sense on paper.
But from a crisis negotiation standpoint, this is a classic, catastrophic misstep. They voluntarily gave up a massive portion of their leverage. And what's fascinating here is they provided a localized intelligence goldmine directly to their adversary.
Because the second those freed hostages landed in Paris, a Mossad intelligence team was waiting to debrief every single one of them.
From those passenger interviews, Mossad mapped out incredible intelligence. They determined the exact number of hijackers, what specific weapons and explosives they were carrying, the exact positions and rotation schedules of the Ugandan soldiers.
And a rough layout of where the hostages were being held inside the terminal. But there is a detail here in the intelligence gathering that entirely shifted the operational reality. The Israelis didn't just have to rely on passenger memory to map the building. They realized that an Israeli construction company called Sol Bona had actually built the Entebbe terminal back in the 1960s.
The Israeli Defense Forces literally had the original architectural blueprints in their archives.
Yes. They knew every corridor, every single exit, the thickness of the walls, and every room down to the inch.
That intelligence is the turning point. But having blueprints and launching a military operation are 2 entirely different things. Back in Israel, a fierce debate was tearing through the cabinet. On one side, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin is deeply hesitant.
He heavily favors negotiation.
Right, because the geopolitical and human stakes of a military failure are apocalyptic. He does not want to risk the lives of elite soldiers and the remaining hostages on a massive gamble located 4,000 kilometers away,
Mm.
deep inside a hostile nation, surrounded by the army of an unpredictable dictator.
But on the other side of the table is Defense Minister Shimon Peres, who is adamant about a militarist strike. Peres is arguing the broader geopolitical reality. If Israel capitulates to these demands, it signals to the world that Israeli citizens are open targets globally.
He argues that giving in will only invite a permanent season of terror, and Israel must signal that it cannot be extorted, regardless of the distance.
And the pressure from the hostages' families, combined with Peres' relentless insistence, finally pushes Rabin to look at the tactical options.
And the initial options proposed were logically rejected due to severe operational flaws.
Like what?
Well, the first idea was sending Navy commandos by boat across Lake Victoria. However, the lake was teeming with massive crocodiles, and tactically, there was absolutely no reliable exit strategy once the commandos hit the shore. They would be trapped.
The sheer scale of the environmental and tactical obstacles is staggering. Crocodiles. What were the other options on the table?
The second plan involved dropping paratroopers near the airport, but that relied entirely on the assumption that Idi Amin would cooperate with the Israeli forces after the drop, which was an impossible variable to trust.
Yeah, not going to happen.
The third plan was to sneak commandos onto a modified civilian aircraft, land as if it were a routine flight, and storm the terminal. That was deemed far too risky for the civilian passengers who would inevitably be caught in the crossfire on the tarmac.
So they needed something else, something blindingly fast that doesn't rely on anyone's permission, cooperation, or a localized exit strategy. They needed what eventually becomes known as Operation Thunderbolt. But to put together an operation that complex, you need time.
This is where statecraft and back-channel deception come into play. Israel signals a fake, highly publicized willingness to negotiate. They claim they are ready to meet the demands, but simply need several days to arrange the complex diplomatic transfer of prisoners from all these different sovereign countries.
And the deception works. The hijackers buy the administrative excuse. Even Idi Amin buys it. He feels so secure in his position that he actually leaves the country to attend a diplomatic meeting in Mauritius.
He just leaves.
They agree to extend the execution deadline to July 4th at 2:00 p.m. The trap is officially set.
That multi-day extension is the critical window the Israeli Defense Forces required to mobilize.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's the night of July 3rd, 1976. The launch begins. 4 massive C-130 Hercules transport planes take off from Sharm el-Sheikh.
They chose the Hercules because it can land on short, unpaved runways and carry immense weight.
Trailing behind them are 2 Boeing 707s. One is fully configured as a flying hospital, acting as a medical backup circling over neighboring Kenya, and the other serves as an airborne command center. They fly at an extreme low altitude, some of them is just 100 feet off the water, staying completely under the radar.
Incredible.
They maintain strict radio silence, crossing the Red Sea, threading their way over Ethiopia and Kenya to finally reach Lake Victoria.
The logistics of navigating that airspace undetected are monumental. But the ground strategy is where the true operational audacity lies. Inside the first Hercules, which is scheduled to land in the dead of night with its lights completely off, is a 29-man assault team.
This is an elite special reconnaissance unit known as Sayeret Matkal.
And they are led by Commander Yonatan Netanyahu.
They bring a highly specific decoy with them. It isn't a new weapon or explosive. It's a black Mercedes and 2 Land Rovers.
Right, the Israelis had acquired, repainted, and rigged these vehicles to look exactly like Idi Amin's personal presidential convoy.
The plan was a modern-day Trojan horse.
They would drive this fake convoy directly off the ramp of the C-130 and straight up to the terminal. The expectation was that the Ugandan guards, accustomed to Amin's erratic behavior, would assume their president was making a surprise late-night visit and simply wave them through the outer security checkpoints.
It is brilliant in its simplicity. But just days earlier, Idi Amin had purchased a brand new white Mercedes. The black one was no longer his primary vehicle.
That is a critical intelligence gap. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of military history, this is a textbook example of the inherent friction of warfare. The military strategist Karl von Clausewitz famously noted that in war, everything is very simple, but the simplest thing is difficult.
No plan survives first contact with the enemy intact.
Exactly. The mark of an elite unit is not the perfection of their initial plan, but their capacity to adapt to instantaneous failure without halting their forward momentum.
And that failure happens the moment the fake convoy rolls toward the terminal in the dark. Two Ugandan guards spot the black Mercedes. They know instantly that something is wrong. They raise their rifles, ordering the convoy to halt.
Now, the Israeli commandos had strict orders not to engage the Ugandan soldiers unless it was absolutely necessary to preserve the mission.
But stopping the convoy 300 meters from the hostages is simply not an option.
The tension in that split second dictates the entire operation. One of the Israeli commandos fires a silenced pistol at the nearest guard. If the engagement had ended there, the deception might have barely held. But a soldier riding in the Land Rover behind the Mercedes, fearing that the wounded guard was about to open fire on his commander, lets off an unsilenced burst of gunfire.
The silence is totally shattered. The element of surprise evaporates into the night air. The commandos have to abandon the vehicles immediately. They're forced into a frantic 300-meter sprint toward the terminal on foot. Up in the old control tower, Ugandan soldiers hear the gunfire and start raining sniper fire down on the tarmac.
As the team pushes forward to breach the building, Commander Yonatan Netanyahu is struck in the chest by a sniper's bullet.
Oh, wow.
He is fatally wounded. But the discipline of Seret Matkal holds firm. His men do not stop to tend to him. They know that the entire mission and the lives of over 100 hostages depends on relentless, overwhelming speed.
They burst through the doors of the main hall, shouting at the top of their lungs in both Hebrew and English, "Stay down! Stay down!" The hijackers, realizing what is happening, immediately open fire.
What follows is a highly choreographed tactical clearing of the terminal, heavily reliant on those Solbona architectural blueprints. In the chaotic firefight, the commandos know exactly which corners to sweep and which side rooms to breach.
Wilfried Bose and Brigitte Kuhlmann are neutralized instantly.
The commandos use precision fire to take down all 7 hijackers in the vicinity. But tragically, in the confusion of the crossfire, as people are rising to their feet despite the warnings, 3 hostages are killed.
While this chaos is unfolding inside the terminal, there are simultaneous tactical operations happening outside on the tarmac. The other 3 Hercules planes have landed. Secondary teams fan out to secure the perimeter of the new terminal building, ensuring no Ugandan military reinforcements can push through to the hostage staging area.
And another team heads straight for the runway to deal with the Ugandan Air Force.
They locate 11 MiG fighter jets parked in a row on the tarmac. The Israeli forces systematically destroy every single one of them.
And this was not an act of vengeance or an afterthought. It was a calculated tactical necessity.
Right, because the C-130 Hercules transport planes are heavily laden and incredibly slow.
The commanders had to ensure that once those rescue planes lifted off, there would be absolutely nothing in Ugandan airspace capable of pursuing and shooting them down.
The precision of the timeline is staggering. From the moment the wheels of the first plane touched down to the moment the last Hercules was rolling back down the runway for takeoff, the entire ground operation took exactly 53 minutes.
53 minutes.
Out of 106 hostages held in that terminal, 102 were rescued and loaded onto the planes.
However, we must impartially report the tragedy that befell the final hostage. There was an elderly woman named Dora Block who had fallen severely ill earlier in the week and had been transferred to a civilian hospital in Kampala, miles away from the airport.
She couldn't be reached.
She could not be reached during the rapid 53-minute tactical footprint. After the Israeli planes departed the country, a deeply humiliated and furious Idi Amin reportedly ordered his forces to drag her from her hospital bed. She was murdered in a final, brutal act of retaliation from a dictator made to look powerless in his own territory.
So what does this all mean? When those transport planes finally returned to Ben Gurion Airport, the exact same tarmac where this whole story started just a week prior, the nation erupts in celebration. But as we've seen, it is a deeply bittersweet victory.
The political legacy of this raid cannot be overstated. The death of the IDF's most gifted young commander, Yoni Netanyahu, immediately transformed him into a national martyr. It made him an enduring symbol of Israeli military resolve.
And it permanently embedded the Netanyahu name into the foundation of Israeli political life.
Yes, that narrative of sacrifice and martyrdom directly fueled the political rise of his younger brother, Benjamin Netanyahu, who would go on to shape global geopolitics for decades to come.
It's incredible how a single 53-minute operation creates ripples that endure for half a century. For you, listening right now, why does this matter today? It's the ultimate historical case study in the power of leveraging obscure advantages. Think about the sheer luck and preparation involved in having those old soul bone architectural blueprints.
It's a masterclass in the mechanics of crisis decision-making, weighing impossible odds and trusting in the sheer power of speed, intelligence, and adaptability.
The operation, which was later officially renamed Operation Yonatan, proved that a small nation could project power 4,000 kilometers away to protect its citizens. The message it sent to the world was unmistakable. The distance doesn't matter. The odds don't matter. If you take them, we will come for them.
This raises a final important question, something for you to mull over after we finish today.
Mm.
We've just spent all this time analyzing an operation that relied on pinpoint accuracy, architectural blueprints, and split-second tactical timing. But think about the sheer, terrifying void of flying 4,000 kilometers in 1976. This is an era long before modern GPS, before real-time satellite feeds, before instant digital communication. They were flying completely in the dark, under the radar, hoping the intelligence held up across a continent. Makes you wonder, how much of modern history was decided not by grand, sweeping boardroom strategies, but by someone simply refusing to turn back when a plan started to go wrong over a minor, unpredictable detail?
Like the color of a dictator's car.
Exactly.
That is a fascinating thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. We hope this deep dive gave you a sharp new perspective on a piece of history that reads like an action thriller but was very, very real. Keep questioning the narratives, keep exploring the details, and keep diving deep into the forces that shape our world. We'll catch you next time.